The myth becomes reality. Sarah moved carefully through the dark canyon, her 3 hearts beating fast. The air smelled of burnt metal and fear. She clutched her medkit tightly, her slender fingers trembling. The Zhelek were healers, not fighters. Her mission was to help injured colonists on the distant moon of Pharos. But now, everything had gone wrong. The Krell marauders had found them. The Krell were nightmares come to life. Their armor was black, their eyes glowing red. They hunted the weak, leaving ruins behind. And now, they were here. Zyra's transport had been ambushed. Her team was dead. She had run until her legs ached. But the Krell were hunters. They would find her soon. Her comm unit crackled softly. A cold voice came through. Target located. Sector Delta. Move in. Zyra froze. They were close. Too close. She ducked behind a jagged rock, her breath shallow. Her purple skin shifted to a pale shade of fear. Her eyes scanned the shadows. There was no one to help her. No one left. The humans were supposed to protect the colonies long ago, but humans were myths now. The stories said they once stood against the Krell with unmatched courage. But that was a long time ago. The last humans died 2 centuries earlier. Just stories, she told herself. Footsteps echoed through the canyon. Heavy boots. The Krell were here. Zyra's heart pounded. She gripped her medkit, as if it could protect her. The footsteps stopped just on the other side of the rock. A guttural voice growled. "Come out, little healer. We only want to talk." The lie was obvious. Zyra closed her eyes and tried not to breathe. The Krell soldier leaned over the rock. His sharp teeth glinted under his helmet. Zyra felt his hot breath. Her body froze. The soldier raised his weapon. A sharp crack split the air. The Krell's head jerked back, his red eyes flickering out. His body collapsed to the ground. Zyra gasped. That shot hadn't come from Krell weapons. She peeked over the rock. A figure stepped from the shadows. It wore black armor, scratched and scarred. A worn human insignia was painted on the chest. A heavy rifle rested in its hands. The helmet turned toward her. "Stay down," the figure said. The voice was rough, human, but humans were extinct. The Krell shouted in the distance. Human signature detected. Attack. The stranger moved fast. He slid into cover beside Zyra and fired down the canyon. Energy bolts cut through the night. The Krell returned fire. Rocks exploded around them. Zyra's breath caught in her throat. You're human." The figure didn't look at her. Focus on surviving. Talk later. The Krell moved closer. The stranger threw a small sphere into the canyon. "Cover your ears." Zyra obeyed. A blinding flash followed, along with a deep, vibrating boom. The Krell screamed. The stranger sprang up, firing with deadly accuracy. One by one, the Krell fell. Silence followed. Smoke filled the canyon. Zyra slowly uncovered her ears. The stranger stood and turned to her. He removed his helmet. Underneath was a pale human face, weathered with scars. His eyes were sharp and cold. You're really human," she whispered. He gave a grim smile. "Myth. No, we're just getting started." In the distance, more Krell voices echoed. The hunt wasn't over. "Come on," the human said, helping her to her feet. "We've got a war to finish." The Forgotten Guardians. Zyra's legs burned as she followed the human through the narrow canyon. The night air felt heavier with every step. The sharp scent of scorched rock and plasma lingered, a reminder of the brutal ambush they had just escaped. Behind them, the distant growls of Krell warbeasts echoed through the canyon walls. The enemy wasn't giving up. The human moved with purpose. His steps were quick but careful, avoiding loose stones that could reveal their path. Zyra clutched her medkit, her mind still spinning. Humans were extinct. Every history archive said so. And yet here he was, a living myth, guiding her through the dark. Who "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. The human didn't stop. "Captain Dax Kane, Phantom Division." She almost tripped. Phantom Division. That's impossible. They were wiped out during the Extinction Wars, 200 years ago. Dax glanced back. His pale, scarred face was hard to read. Not wiped out. Forgotten. He turned and led her deeper into the canyon. Zyra's mind raced. The Phantom Division was legendary in angelic history. Humans who stood against the Krell when no one else could. They fought until their worlds burned and vanished without a trace. But myths weren't supposed to breathe and bleed. The canyon opened into a wide, circular clearing. In the moonlight, Zyra saw a jagged crack in the cliffside. Dax approached and placed his hand on the stone. The surface shimmered, revealing the hidden entrance. "Inside," he said. Zyra hesitated. The Zillik were taught to fear humans, to remember the chaos they brought during the wars. But Dax had saved her. And right now, the Krell were the greater danger. She stepped inside. The door sealed behind them. The cavern beyond was unlike anything she'd seen before. Dim lights hummed along the walls, powered by old human tech. The space was filled with equipment scavenged from a past war. Battle-worn armor lined the walls. In the center, a circular holomap projected star charts and tactical data. "Welcome to the den," Dax said. Zyra turned slowly, taking it all in. The air smelled of metal and ozone. A faint, rhythmic hum pulsed beneath her feet. Old generators, struggling but steady. A figure stepped from the shadows, weapon raised. "Commander, she's not one of ours." Dax lifted a hand. "She's with me, Reyes." Medic. Zillik. Reyes, a dark-skinned woman with sharp eyes, lowered her weapon but didn't relax. "Zillik don't fight. Why is she here?" "The Krell were about to kill her," Dax said. "And she intercepted one of their transmissions. They're hunting us." Reyes cursed under her breath. "Of course they are. We've been poking the hive too long." She glared at Zyra. "If she turns on us." "I won't," Zyra said quickly. "The Krell killed my team. I want to help." Reyes didn't look convinced, but she nodded once and walked away. Dax gestured toward the holomap. The projection showed glowing red markers clustered around the moon. "The Krell think we're extinct. We've kept it that way for generations, but now they've found us." Zyra's eyes traced the red dots. "They're closing in. Fast." Dax's jaw tightened. "Yeah, the Krell want something here. They've been searching old human sites for months." He pointed to a glowing blue triangle on the map. "That's their primary command ship. If we don't stop it, they'll glass this moon and take whatever tech they're after." Zyra's breath caught. "But how? You're only a few. The Krell have thousands." Dax gave a grim smile. "Humans don't fight fair. The forgotten history." As the map zoomed in, Dax explained. During the Extinction Wars, humanity had fought to save the galaxy from the Krell, but their allies abandoned them. The Zillik, the Yari, the Tovari, all species pulled back, afraid of Krell retaliation. Humanity stood alone. Billions died. Earth burned. But the Phantom Division survived. Not because of strength, but because of stubbornness. They hid in old underground bunkers, away from scanners. For 2 centuries, they trained in the shadows, passing down knowledge like an unbroken chain. Parents taught children. Children became warriors. They became the galaxy's unseen protectors. "We've stopped Krell raids for decades," Dax said. Quietly. No one knew. Zyra's throat tightened. And now they know. The holomap flashed. Krell troop movements shifted toward a central location. The medical outpost Zyra had come to help. Dax's eyes darkened. They're going to hit the colony. They want the old human relay tower beneath it. If they get control of it, they'll find every hidden phantom base. We have to warn the colonists. Zyra said. Dax shook his head. Too late. The attack force will arrive in 6 hours. The colony won't last that long. Zyra stared at the map. The Krell were monsters. The colonists were doctors, teachers, families. She thought of the scared children she treated earlier that day. We have to fight. Her voice was soft but firm. Dax's gaze met hers. Fighting means risking every phantom life. If we fail, humanity dies forever. Isn't that what humans are known for? Fighting when others run. For a long moment, Dax said nothing. Then he smiled, faintly. You've been listening to too many legends. He turned to the map and tapped a command. Sirens echoed through the cavern. Footsteps sounded as phantom soldiers gathered. Dax raised his voice. Listen up. The Krell are coming for the colony. And for us. We've stayed in the shadows for 2 centuries. He glanced at Zyra, then back at his troops. Tonight, we step into the light. The soldiers roared in response. Zyra's heart raced. The legends were true. Humans were fighters. And this fight had just begun. The Siege of Shadows. The air inside the phantom base grew thick with anticipation. The low hum of weapons charging, the rhythmic clink of armor adjustments, and the steady, focused breathing of hardened soldiers filled the cavern. Ahira stood to one side, her mind racing as she watched the humans prepare for battle. Their movements were sharp and efficient, like a pack of wolves ready to defend their territory. Captain Dax Kane stood by the holomap, issuing commands. His scarred face was unreadable, but his voice was steady. We have one goal: protect the colony and stop the Krell from activating that relay. If they crack the old comms grid, they'll find us. Every hidden phantom outpost, every civilian refuge, every survivor. We can't let that happen. The soldiers nodded. There was no bravado here, just quiet resolve. Zyra swallowed hard. The colony was defenseless. Its people were healers, researchers, and families who had fled the war. They didn't even have perimeter shields. The Krell would tear through them like predators in a field of prey. Captain Kane, she said, stepping closer. What's the plan? There are thousands of them, and only a few hundred of you. Dax's lips twitched into a faint smile. We don't fight their numbers. We fight their minds. The battle plan. Dax zoomed the holomap, showing the colony's layout. At its heart stood an ancient human comm tower, rusted and inactive for decades. Beneath it lay the relay the Krell wanted. The tower's structure is old but solid, Dax explained. The Krell will focus their firepower there. We'll make them believe it's more heavily defended than it is. He pointed to several narrow valleys leading into the colony. These corridors become kill zones. We'll set charges here and here to funnel their forces. We'll use old drone tech to create false energy signatures near the tower. Reyes, the second in command, crossed her arms. And when they figure out the trick, Dax's jaw tightened. We hit them from behind. Fast. Hard. We only get one chance. Zyra listened, her stomach tight. The plan was clever, but risky. The Krell had superior numbers and brute force. If the timing was even a few seconds off, the phantoms would be crushed. The soldiers moved quickly, splitting into squads and gathering equipment. Zyra followed Dax to a storage crate marked with faded Earth symbols. He opened it, revealing rows of plasma rifles and explosives. His hand hovered over a small rusted locket resting beside a rifle. He picked it up and opened it. Inside was a picture of a woman and a small child. Your family? Zyra asked softly. Dax nodded but didn't speak. After a moment, he slipped the locket into his pocket and handed her a small energy pistol. Stay close, he said. And if things go bad, run. Zyra clenched the weapon with shaky hands. I won't run. He gave her a long, measuring look. Then he nodded. The siege begins. The phantoms moved through the underground tunnels and emerged near the colony's outskirts. The colony itself was silent. Rows of prefab shelters lined the dusty streets. The civilians were hidden in underground bunkers, terrified but trusting the phantoms to protect them. Dax knelt beside Xyra behind a crumbling stone wall. He tapped his comm. Eyes on the enemy. Reyes' voice crackled back. Confirmed. Krell warbands inbound. 5 heavy walkers, multiple infantry units. ETA. 3 minutes. Dax cursed under his breath. Walkers? That wasn't in the recon. Xyra's heart dropped. Krell walkers were towering machines with thick armor and plasma cannons. The colony's defenses were laughably inadequate against such firepower. They know we're here, she whispered. Dax's face darkened. Yeah, they want us to bleed. The horizon shimmered. Metallic shapes emerged from the shadows, illuminated by the pale moons. The Krell marched in tight formation, their black armor gleaming. The walkers rumbled forward, each step shaking the ground. Plasma cannons swiveled, searching for targets. Xyra's breathing quickened. They're coming straight for the tower. Exactly as planned, Dax said. Rise, fire the charges. A distant boom echoed across the valley. Explosions erupted on the left side of the Krell formation, sending debris flying. The Krell staggered, their front line breaking into confusion. The phantoms opened fire from concealed positions. Blue energy bolts lanced through the air, striking Krell soldiers with deadly precision. The Krell roared in frustration and returned fire. Plasma rounds hammered the colony's perimeter, blasting apart shelters and scorching the ground. Walker cannons charging. Rey shouted. Focus fire on their legs. Dax ordered. The phantoms redirected their shots, targeting the walker's knee joints. One walker stumbled, sparks spraying from its damaged servos. Another exploded as a well-placed missile struck its power core. For a moment, hope flared. The plan was working. Then the largest walker stepped forward. Its plasma cannon hummed with lethal energy. They're targeting the comm tower. Xyra yelled. Dax grabbed a missile launcher from a fallen soldier and aimed. Come on. Come on. The walker fired. A massive plasma blast streaked toward the tower. Dax pulled the trigger. The missile hit the plasma cannon just as it fired. The explosion split the night sky. The walker collapsed in flames, but the plasma shot grazed the tower, blowing apart the upper section. The relays exposed. Xyra shouted. Dax's comm crackled. Krell reinforcements coming from the east, Rise reported. We're being flanked. Dax's eyes scanned the map on his wrist display. The Krell were adapting. The battle was tilting against the phantoms. We have to retreat, Rise urged. Dax's voice was cold. No, we hold. He turned to Xyra. Get to the relay core. If the Krell reach it, game over. But, go. Xyra sprinted toward the tower, heart racing. Plasma fire burned the ground around her. The phantoms fought desperately to hold the line. Dax stood in the center of the street, rifle blazing as Krell warriors charge. As Xyra reached the base of the tower, she heard the Krell commander's voice broadcast through a loudspeaker. Humans, we thought you were ghosts. Now we see you. And tonight, we end you. Xyra ducked inside the tower. The old relay core hummed faintly, ancient circuits flickering to life. Her fingers flew across the controls. Guided by instinct and fear, she accessed the primary defense grid, a relic of Earth's past wars. Outside, the battle rage. The phantoms were outnumbered 3-1. Dax's voice came through her comm. Xyra, whatever you're doing, do it fast. A Krell warbeast crashed into the tower entrance. Its jaws snapped as it lunged toward her. Xyra screamed and fired her pistol. The shot hit the beast's eye, and it collapsed with a shriek. The control panel flashed green. She hit the activation key. Across the colony, buried plasma turrets powered up and fired. Energy beams sliced through the Krell ranks. The enemy faltered. Xyra slumped against the console, gasping. Outside, the phantoms pushed forward, driving the Krell back. Her relief was short-lived. The console flashed red. A new Krell signal was broadcasting. Zyra's heart froze as she read the words. Primary orbital cannon online. Target. Colony. Fire in 5 minutes. She grabbed her comm. Dax, the Krell are about to fire from orbit. We have 5 minutes. There was silence. Then his voice came back, tight and grim. Understood. We go for the command ship, the heart of humanity. The control room crackled with static as Zyra gripped her comm device. Dax's voice had gone silent after his last message. We go for the command ship. Outside, the night sky shimmered with faint crimson streaks. Ion trails from Krell orbital platforms moving into firing position. Their cannon, high above the moon's thin atmosphere, prepared to unleash destruction. The colony, the phantoms, and everyone Zyra had tried to protect would be reduced to ash in minutes. Her hands trembled as she scanned the relay console. The countdown displayed in bright red. 4:47. 4:46. Think. Focus. Humans don't give up. They fight. She sprinted to the exit, stepping over the smoking corpse of the Krell warbeast she had killed moments earlier. The beast's thick, gray hide was charred where her energy blast had pierced its skull. The scent of burnt flesh stung her nostrils, but she forced herself to move past it. Outside, the colony streets were scared and broken. Plasma burns scorched the ground. Shelters lay in ruins, and bodies, human and Krell alike, were scattered like discarded toys. Phantom soldiers moved through the debris, dragging wounded comrades to cover, while others provided suppressive fire. Zyra spotted Reyes crouched behind a half-collapsed wall. The lieutenant's armor was scorched, and blood dripped from a cut above her brow. Despite the injury, Reyes fired sharp, precise bursts from her rifle. Reyes. Zyra ducked beside her. Where's Dax? Gone, Reyes said through clenched teeth. Took 2 squads and a dropship, headed for the Krell command ship. She reloaded with practiced speed. Crazy bastard thinks he can stop an orbital cannon with a dozen fighters. We have to help him. Help him. Reyes's eyes were cold. We can't even hold the colony. She gestured toward the craters and bodies. We're dying down here. Zyra's heart raced. She could feel the despair radiating from the phantom soldiers. They were warriors, trained to fight and survive, but they were still human. Their resources were thin, and their hope thinner. She grabbed Reyes's arm. The phantoms fight for others, right? That's what Dax said. You're humanity's last defenders. If you give up now, you betray everything your ancestors died for. Reyes shook her off. Easy for you to say, alien. You don't get it. No. Zyra's voice cracked with emotion. You're right. I'm not human. My people ran during the Extinction Wars. We abandoned Earth and watched you die. We called you reckless and violent. But I've seen you fight here tonight. Not for conquest, but for others. For strangers. For children. That's humanity's heart. Reyes hesitated. Behind her, the surviving phantoms were listening. Their exhausted faces turned toward Zyra. She pointed to the burning sky. Dax is up there fighting alone, because he believes in that heart. If we abandon him, if we let the Krell destroy this colony, we don't just lose this battle, we lose your legacy. Reyes's eyes narrowed. Then she cursed under her breath, tapped her comm, and barked. All units. Regroup. We're going after the command ship. The skyward gamble. The surviving phantoms scrambled toward the remaining dropships, battered transports salvaged from ancient bunkers. Engines sputtered as they powered up. As Zyra strapped into a seat beside Reyes, the lieutenant muttered, "This is suicide." Zyra gave a shaky smile. Maybe. But humans don't run from monsters, right? The dropship lifted off with a shudder, accelerating toward the dim shape of the Krell command vessel. Through the viewport, Kyra saw the massive cannon beneath the ship glowing as it charged for the orbital strike. The red countdown on her wrist device read 2:13, 2:12. The Krell ship resembled a massive black dagger hovering above the moon. Plasma turrets lined its hull, firing at Dax's squad of fighters as they darted like insects around the enormous craft. The Phantom's weapons were too weak to penetrate the thick hull. Reyes' voice crackled over the comm. "Kane, we're inbound." Dax's reply came after a pause. "Told you to stay in the shadows, Reyes." Reyes grinned. "Yeah, well, ghosts don't win wars." The dropship rattled as Krell plasma beams lashed toward them. Syra gripped her seat as a nearby ship exploded into fiery debris. The remaining transports dove toward the command ship's surface. The hull loomed closer, sleek, cold, and metallic. Magnetic clamps engaged as the ships latched onto the ship's dorsal side. The Phantom soldiers spilled out, weapons raised. Syra followed Reyes, her pulse racing. The ship vibrated beneath their feet as plasma discharges hummed from within. The orbital cannon was almost fully charged. Dax and his team appeared from a side hatch, covered in soot and blood. His armor was cracked, and a makeshift bandage wrapped around his left arm. "You took your time," he said, giving Reyes a lopsided smile. Then he spotted Syra. "I told you to stay back." "And I told you I don't run," she shot back. Dax's lips twitched, but the tension in his eyes remained. "The cannon core is 4 decks below us. We rigged explosives on the surface power nodes, but it wasn't enough. We need to get to the core manually." Reyes scowled. "Manually means walking into a death trap." "Yeah." The deck beneath their feet shuddered. The countdown hit 1-5, 1-4. "No time to argue," Dax said. "We move." The descent into darkness. The team raced toward the access hatch. Dax pried it open, revealing a narrow maintenance shaft. One by one, they descended into the ship's heart. The air thickened with acrid, metallic fumes. The walls pulsed with energy as the cannon charged. At the bottom of the shaft, the core room opened before them. A massive cylindrical structure glowed with crackling plasma energy. Control panels lined the walls, guarded by Krell soldiers in heavy armor. Dax motioned for silence. "Take positions. On my mark." The Phantoms spread out. Syra crouched behind a console, gripping her small pistol with slippery hands. Dax raised 3 fingers. 2, 1. The Phantoms opened fire. Blue and red bolts of energy sliced through the chamber. The Krell roared in surprise but quickly returned fire. A Phantom fell beside Syra, his chest armor smoking. Dax charged toward the core, planting explosives along the base. A Krell officer lunged at him with a serrated blade. Dax blocked the strike, but took a deep cut to his ribs. Syra didn't think, she acted. She fired her pistol. The energy blast struck the Krell in the neck, dropping him instantly. "Nice shot." Dax gasped. Blood stained his armor. "Focus," she shouted. The countdown hit 0:30, 0:29. The explosives were set, but the activation trigger was damaged. Dax cursed. "The detonator's fried." "We can shoot it from cover," Reyes said. Dax shook his head. "Needs manual input." Reyes paled. "Whoever stays to trigger it won't make it out." A heavy silence fell. Dax's eyes locked on the control panel. He stepped forward. "I'll do it." "No," Syra said, heart cracking. He smiled faintly. "We've been running from shadows for 200 years. Time we stepped into the light." He raised his rifle and shot out the locking mechanism on the exit hatch. "Go." The Phantoms hesitated, then followed Reyes through the hatch. Syra lingered. "Dax, please." "Go, healer," he said softly. "Be the witness. Tell them what we stood for." Tears blurred her vision as she turned and ran. The hatch sealed behind her, the heart of humanity. From the Phantom dropship, Kyra watched through the viewport as the Krell command ship loomed overhead. The cannon's core glowed blinding white. Then it erupted. The ship's hull split apart in a violent explosion. Fire and debris rained down. The red glow in the sky vanished. The colony was safe. Zyra's fists clenched the straps of her harness. Dax Kane was gone. But his words echoed in her mind. Heroes aren't myths. They're the people who stand when others fall. She looked at the phantom soldiers around her, their faces etched with sorrow and pride. The war isn't over, she said softly. We carry his fight now. The phantoms nodded. Outside, the sun rose over the colony, lighting the sky with shades of gold and crimson. And for the first time in centuries, humanity stood visible again, not as ghosts, but as guardians. The rising flame. The moon of Veros lay quiet beneath the dawn sky. Smoke drifted from the shattered remains of the Krell command ship. Its twisted wreckage spread across the barren surface. The towering orbital cannon was gone, reduced to molten debris. The colony had survived. But survival came with a price. Zyra stood near the edge of the crater where the command ship had fallen. The ground was still warm beneath her boots. The metallic scent of scorched metal and burnt flesh filled the air. Somewhere beneath the rubble was Dax Kane, the human who had become a myth before her eyes. Her chest ached with the weight of his sacrifice. The memory was sharp, his scared face, the calm acceptance in his eyes as he triggered the explosives. Be the witness. Tell them what we stood for. Ray's approached from behind, her armor blackened and scratched. Scans are complete, she said, voice rough. No life signs. Zyra didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the wreckage. Ray shifted uncomfortably. We need to move. The Krell won't stay quiet for long. Zyra nodded slowly but didn't turn away. Her hands clenched into fists. The phantoms had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The Krell wouldn't forget this defeat. They would return, angrier and stronger. Dax's sacrifice had given them time. What they did with that time would decide everything. The weight of legacy. The phantom survivors gathered in the colony's central square later that day. The civilian colonists, healers, teachers, scientists, emerged from the underground bunkers. Their eyes were wide with fear and confusion as they took in the wreckage. A makeshift command center had been set up beside the damaged comm tower. Zyra stood at the front with Reyes and the remaining officers. The phantoms, reduced now to fewer than 80 souls, stood in formation despite their injuries. Their armor was battered, their faces pale with exhaustion. But they stood. Ray stepped forward and activated a small holoprojector. The image of Dax Kane appeared, captured from a recording taken during a previous mission. His voice filled the air. We are the shadows that protect the light, not for power, not for glory, but because someone has to stand when others fall. We are the last guardians of humanity's promise, to never give up, to never run, and to always fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. The hologram flickered off. Silence followed. Then Reyes cleared her throat. Captain Kane died stopping the Krell strike. His sacrifice saved this colony. But we're not done. The Krell wanted the relay tower for a reason. We need to find out why, and stop them. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Zyra took a deep breath and stepped forward. The Krell are searching for something, she said, voice louder than she thought possible. The relay they targeted is part of a larger network built during the Extinction Wars. It's old Earth technology, something the Krell fear enough to risk a full-scale invasion. Reyes frowned. The Krell don't fear anything. Zyra shook her head. They're afraid of what it can find. She pressed a button on her wrist device, projecting a star map above them. It showed the known sectors of space surrounding Veros. One system blinked in crimson, Sol system, Earth's graveyard. The relay was connected to Earth. Kyra continued. And before Dax died, the core log showed a Krell transmission. Recover the heart of Sol. They believe something was left behind on Earth, something powerful. The crowd's tension deepened. Reyes exhaled slowly. Earth's been dead for 200 years. Dead doesn't mean empty, Tyra replied. If the Krell think something's there, we can't ignore it. Reyes hesitated. Then she nodded. We head for Earth. Journey to a forgotten world. 2 days later, the Phantom Fleet, a battered collection of scavenged ships, rose from Varos's surface and vanished into the darkness of space. Zara sat in the cockpit of the command shuttle beside Reyes. The view screen displayed the swirling blue vortex of the jump gate ahead. Beyond it lay Sol System, the birthplace of humanity. She glanced at Reyes. Have you ever been to Earth? Reyes's lips tightened. No one has. The Krell bombed it until the oceans boiled. It's a ghost world now. The jump gate activated with a crackling hum. The ship lurched forward and disappeared into the slipstream. Arrival in the graveyard. The fleet emerged into the Sol System hours later. The sight on the view screen stole Sarah's breath. Earth hung ahead of them. A scared, broken sphere. The blue oceans were gone, replaced by vast stretches of scorched, black crust. The atmosphere swirled with toxic clouds, and the once glistening orbital stations were now shattered skeletons drifting in silence. The system's outer defenses were still visible. Massive gun platforms left from the last war. The phantoms had grown from the survivors who had hidden beneath those weapons. Reyes pointed at the sensor panel. We're being scanned. Zyra's eyes widened. Scanned? By what? The console beeped. An old Earth signal appeared. Origin. Earth Defense Grid. That's impossible, Reyes whispered. The grid went offline when Earth fell. The comm crackled to life. A voice, metallic and distorted, spoke in heavily accented English. Unidentified vessels. You have entered Earth defense territory. Identify or be destroyed. The phantom soldiers exchanged stunned looks. Reyes leaned toward the comm. This is Lieutenant Reyes of Phantom Division. We're here to investigate Krell activity. Who are you? There was a pause. Then the voice responded. Phantom Division recognized. Authorization incomplete. Awaiting verification. The tension in the cabin was suffocating. Zara quickly tapped into the old relay codes Dax had shown her before the battle. Her fingers shook as she transmitted the Phantom Division's ancestral code. The screen flickered. The voice returned, softer this time. Code verified. Welcome home, Guardians. The view screen shifted. Earth's surface zoomed in, highlighting a location deep beneath the ruins of an old metropolis. Coordinates appeared. 39.90 Dayton, 116.40 Daejeon. Old Beijing. Reyes leaned back, eyes wide. The heart of Seoul. It's real. The sensor alarms blared. Krell warships appeared at the system's edge. Zyra's heart raced. The enemy had followed them. The Krell know about the heart, Reyes said. And they're coming to take it. Zara stared at the dying planet below. Dax had sacrificed himself to stop the Krell once. Now it was their turn to finish what he started. We go to Earth, she said. Reyes gripped the controls. Hold on. The fleet accelerated toward the ruined planet as the Krell warships charged after them. Beneath Earth's dead surface, something ancient stirred. The last stand. The Phantom Fleet plunged through the broken remnants of Earth's orbit, weaving between skeletal space stations and shattered satellites. The planet below loomed large on the view screen. A scared wasteland bathed in sickly gray light. Thick clouds swirled over dead continents, and vast chasms scared the land where oceans once shimmered. Zara gripped the armrest beside her seat. Earth, the cradle of humanity, the birthplace of legends, and now, possibly, the key to saving the galaxy from the Krell. The comm crackled with static. Reyes's voice broke through. All ships, prepare for atmospheric entry. We're going dark. The Krell will be right behind us. The fleet of phantom ships angled downward and entered the toxic atmosphere. Flames lit their hulls as they pierced the dense cloud layer. The sky below was dim and heavy, the land cloaked in ash. Zaira stared at the desolate surface. Skeletons of ancient skyscrapers jutted from the ground like broken teeth. The coordinates on the navigation panel flashed. 39.90 Dayton, 116.40 Deej. Beijing ruins. As the ships descended toward the target location, Zaira's wrist pinged. A text message appeared. Earth defense grid active. Landing zone secured. Proceed with caution. She turned to Reyes. The system's guiding us. There's something down there. Still alive. Reyes didn't take her eyes off the controls. Then let's find it before the Krell do. The descent into the Forgotten City. The fleet landed in a wide circular plaza surrounded by crumbling structures. The ground was cracked and littered with debris, but in the center stood something unexpected. A sleek, black tower rising from the earth, unmarked by time or damage. It pulsed with faint blue light, like a heartbeat. The soldiers disembarked and formed defensive positions. Zaira approached the tower, her heart racing. A small console extended from its base as she neared. Ancient symbols glowed on its surface, an unfamiliar language mixed with old Earth standard. Reyes joined her. What is it? Zaira ran her fingers across the symbols. They were warm, almost aware. The console hummed beneath her touch, and a voice spoke from hidden speakers. Welcome, Guardians. Accessing Sol Defense Corps. A holographic map appeared, showing Earth's surface. Red markers dotted the continents, each marked with Krell insignias. They were here in greater numbers than the Phantoms had realized. The map zoomed in on the Beijing ruins, revealing an underground facility beneath their feet. The heart of Sol is down there, Zaira whispered. Reyes's comm beeped. A scout's voice came through, panicked. Enemy forces inbound. Krell destroyers descending fast. Zaira stared at the map. The Krell were already closing in from orbit. Their warships would land within minutes. If they reached the core first, it was over. Reyes tightened her grip on her rifle. Phantoms, defensive positions. We hold this ground until the core is secure. The soldiers sprang into action, setting up energy barricades and turret emplacements. Reyes turned to Zaira. Find the entrance. Get that core activated. We'll buy you time. The descent into Earth's heart. Zaira tapped the console. A circular hatch opened in the ground, revealing a stairwell spiraling into darkness. She hesitated. If the Krell reached the surface defenses too quickly, she'd be trapped underground. She looked back. Reyes met her gaze and gave a sharp nod. Go. Zaira descended into the earth. The stairwell led to a narrow corridor lined with glowing cables. The walls pulsed with energy. The air was thin and cold, but breathable. After several minutes of descent, she reached a massive door adorned with the old Earth Defense Force emblem, a stylized phoenix rising from flames. A control panel blinked beside the door. She pressed her hand against it. The panel scanned her, then displayed a message. Foreign genetic signature detected. Override requires human command authorization. Zaira's heart sank. She wasn't human. She pressed the comm button. Reyes, I need you. The system needs human authorization. Static. Then Reyes's voice, tight with urgency. Can't break away. Krell are hitting hard. They're sending in war beasts. Zaira's pulse quickened. She stared at the control panel. The Phantoms were fighting for their lives up there. Dax had sacrificed himself for this moment. And now they were stuck. Her gaze dropped to the base of the console. There, scratched into the metal, was an old Earth inscription. Humanity endures in those who fight with heart. She placed her hand on the panel again. I may not be human by blood, she whispered, but I fight with heart. The console beeped. The door hissed open. A heart of Sol. Beyond the door was a vast chamber. In the center stood a colossal crystalline structure, glowing with golden light. Energy cables snaked from it, pulsing like veins. This was the heart of Sol. Earth's last defense system. Zaira approached the central control platform. A holographic figure appeared above it, an older man in a uniform bearing the Earth defense insignia. His eyes were kind but stern. "I am General Elias Kane, commander of Earth's final defense protocol. If you're seeing this, Earth has fallen, but the war is not over. The Heart of Sol is a planetary defense AI, designed to track and disrupt Krell communication networks. Activate it, and it will reveal every Krell position in the galaxy." Zaira's heart raced. This was what the Krell feared. If the Heart went online, their hidden fleets would become visible. The hologram continued. Warning. Activation will also broadcast Earth's location to the Krell High Command. Prepare for immediate retaliation. The choice was clear. Activate the Heart and risk Earth becoming a war zone again, or let the Krell maintain their advantage. She tapped her comm. "Rise, I can activate the system. It'll expose every Krell fleet, but it'll draw their entire armada here." Reyes's voice crackled back. "Do it. If we don't break their power now, they'll hunt us forever." Zaira placed both hands on the glowing console. The crystal pulsed beneath her palms. Energy surged through the chamber. The floor vibrated. The Heart awakened. Outside, the sky split open with beams of golden light shooting into the clouds. The ground rumbled as dormant defense platforms around the planet powered on for the first time in 200 years. The battle above. Reyes crouched behind a barricade as the ground shook. From the surface, she saw the beams of light shoot toward the sky. The Krell warships circling overhead began to stagger. Their communication relays flickered. "Commander," a soldier shouted. The Heart's broadcasting Krell fleet positions across all known sectors. Reyes switched her comm to the Phantom command channel. "To all remaining Earth fleets, target the Krell ships. We fight here. Now." The planet's ancient orbital defense guns, long dormant, roared to life. Plasma beams lashed upward, striking the Krell destroyers with pinpoint precision. The enemy fleet faltered, caught in the trap Earth's guardians had laid 2 centuries earlier. But the Krell didn't retreat. They doubled down. From the largest warship, a massive dropship descended. Its side bore crimson markings. Krell Warlord Carax. The warlord who had led the slaughter of Earth. The warlord arrives. The dropship crashed into the plaza, sending debris flying. Its hatch opened with a metallic screech. A figure emerged, twice the height of a human, clad in black armor with crimson etchings. Carax's eyes glowed like molten steel. In one hand, he carried a plasma mace that hummed with destructive energy. The phantoms opened fire. Carax raised his free hand, activating an energy shield that deflected the blasts. He advanced with slow, deliberate steps. Reyes cursed. "All units, focus fire on the warlord." The warlord swung his mace. The ground cracked. 3 phantoms were thrown back, their armor shattered. Carax's voice boomed across the plaza. "You have awakened the dead world, and now you will burn with it." Below the surface, Zaira felt the tremors from the battle above. The Heart of Sol displayed the growing Krell presence across the system. The enemy was coming, thousands of warships converging on Earth's coordinates. She activated the planet's last line of defense, the Solar Lance, an ancient weapon designed to harness solar energy and destroy entire fleets. It needed time to charge. Minutes, just a few more minutes. Her comm crackled. Reyes's voice came through, strained and breathless. "Zaira, the warlord's here. He's tearing through us." Zaira's hands froze over the controls. She knew Reyes meant Carax, the butcher of Earth, the being who had started this nightmare centuries ago. "They stood for us. Now we stand for them." She turned toward the elevator, grabbed her pistol, and ascended to the surface. Legends never die. The elevator hummed as it ascended toward the surface. Zaira's pulse pounded in her ears. Her fingers gripped the pistol with white-knuckled intensity. The faint vibration beneath her feet signaled the Heart of Sol's charging process. The Solar Lance, a weapon of planetary defense left from humanity's last war, was nearly ready. Just a few more minutes. But the Krell wouldn't give them that time. Warlord Carax had arrived. The ancient enemy who had led the extinction campaign against Earth was here, now, to finish what he started. And this time, the humans wouldn't run. The elevator doors opened with a metallic hiss. The plaza outside was chaos. Smoke drifted through the air, thick with the metallic tang of scorched earth and plasma discharge. Phantom soldiers crouched behind makeshift barricades, their weapons blazing toward the monstrous figure striding across the battlefield. Carax stood in the center of the plaza, his crimson-edged armor gleaming through the smoke. His plasma mace crackled with each slow, deliberate step. He radiated confidence, his hulking frame exuding the aura of a predator toying with wounded prey. A phantom soldier fired a rocket launcher from the second floor of a ruined building. The missile struck Carax's energy shield with a crackling explosion. The warlord turned toward the shooter and raised his left arm. A pulse of blue energy shot from his gauntlet. The building collapsed in a deafening roar, burying the soldier beneath tons of debris. Carax laughed, a deep, guttural sound that resonated through the plaza, his voice amplified through his helmet speakers. Humans, still clinging to hope, still pretending to matter. His glowing eyes swept the battlefield. Your myths of strength end today. Zyra stepped out from the elevator and raised her pistol. The only myth here is you, Carax. The warlord turned. His red eyes locked on her. He tilted his head slightly. Ah, the healer. The coward species who fled when Earth burned. His mouth twisted into a cruel smile. And now you fight alongside the ghosts of your own shame. Zyra tightened her grip on the pistol. Her voice didn't waver. Humans don't fight for revenge. They fight for those who can't. She fired. The bolt struck Carax's shield, barely making him flinch. The warlord's smile widened. Brave words for prey. He charged. The duel. Zyra dove behind a broken wall as Carax's mace smashed into the ground where she had stood. The pavement cracked, sending shards of rock into the air. She scrambled to her feet and fired again. The shots bounced off his armor. He moved faster than his size suggested. In seconds, he was beside her. His gauntleted hand lashed out and struck her across the chest. The impact sent her flying backward. She hit the ground hard, the air knocked from her lungs. Her pistol skittered away. Carax advanced. His mace crackled with dark energy. Zyra coughed, struggling to breathe. Her chest burned with pain. Her eyes darted toward the control console across the plaza. The solar lance needed more time to charge. Human myths, Carax said, standing over her. Stories of stubbornness, of bravery. He raised his mace. Nothing but whispers from a dead world. The weapon swung downward. A blur of motion intercepted the strike. Rise tackled Carax from the side, driving a plasma blade into the warlord's shoulder joint. Sparks flew as the blade bit through the armor. Carax roared in pain and backhanded Rise, sending her sprawling. But the distraction had given Zyra time. She crawled toward the pistol lying a few meters away. Her fingers closed around the handle just as Carax turned toward her again. He raised his mace, and then froze. The air shimmered beside Zyra. A figure emerged from the smoke, a man in black phantom armor, face pale and scarred. Dax Kane. Zyra's heart stopped. It couldn't be. Dax had died aboard the Krell command ship. She had seen the explosion, felt his absence, and yet here he stood, rifle in hand, eyes locked on the warlord. Kane. Carax growled, disbelief in his voice. Impossible. You died. Dax's lips twitched into a cold smile. Yeah, humanity's good at impossible. He fired. The rifle discharged an experimental disruptor round, a weapon the Phantoms had salvaged from old Earth facilities. The blast hit Carax's shield, overloading it in a cascade of crackling energy. The warlord staggered back, armor smoking. Dax tossed the rifle aside and drew a combat knife from his belt. The blade glowed with a blue charge. He lunged at Carax. The warlord swung his mace in a wide arc. Dax ducked under the strike and drove the knife into Carax's exposed shoulder joint. The warlord roared and slammed his gauntlet into Dax's side. Dax crumpled to the ground. Zyra raised her pistol and fired at Carax's back. The shot hit just above the damaged shoulder plate. Carax turned with a snarl, his mace raised. "Enough," he roared. Zyra braced for the strike. The warlord's body jerked. His eyes widened. He staggered backward. Behind him stood Reyes, holding a plasma grenade against his back. The device was buried in a gap in his armor. Reyes smiled through bloody teeth. Legends never die. The grenade detonated. Carax's torso exploded in a burst of blue fire. His armor shattered. His body collapsed in a heap of smoking metal and flesh. The plaza fell silent. The heart awakens. Zyra scrambled to her feet and ran to the control console. The Solar Lance's display flashed green. Targeting Krell Fleet. Locked. Execute fire sequence. She slammed her hand on the activation panel. The sky above Earth split open as the Solar Lance discharged. A beam of golden energy shot from the planet's surface, piercing the clouds and streaking toward the orbiting Krell fleet. The enemy ships, still disorganized after the loss of their command ship, were caught off guard. The beam struck the lead dreadnought, splitting it in half. Energy coursed across the sky, leaping from ship to ship like a celestial lightning strike. The Krell fleet disintegrated. The ground trembled as the sky lit with falling debris. Then, slowly, the chaos subsided. Earth was quiet again. Aftermath. Zyra turned back toward the battlefield. Reyes sat slumped against a wall, breathing heavily. Phantom soldiers moved through the ruins, tending to the wounded. Her eyes searched for Dax. She found him lying motionless near Carax's body. Blood seeped from beneath his armor. "Dax," she shouted, running to him. She dropped to her knees and placed her hands over his chest wound. His breathing was shallow. His eyes flickered open. "You really don't listen, do you?" he rasped. Tears blurred her vision. "You're supposed to be dead." He coughed weakly. Got lucky. The command ship's blast threw me clear. Woke up buried in scrap. His gaze shifted to the sky. "Looks like you finished it." "The war isn't over," she whispered. Dax smiled faintly. "Good. We need something to do tomorrow." The legacy lives on. Days later, the Heart of Sol transmitted its first signal in 2 centuries. Across the galaxy, human enclaves received the message. Earth stands. Humanity rises. We fight for all who cannot. The legend of humanity had returned. And this time, the galaxy knew. Humans were not myths. They were warriors. And they were here to stay.